Oh, we back, and we talking about nerdy things again. Today we're gonna be talking about the Legend of Korra, which is the follow-up to one of the most acclaimed and beloved animations in recent memory of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Korra aired about 4 years after Avatar ended, and it takes place about 70 years after the events of Avatar. So the creators did a really good job of kind of aging the world up a little bit. They added some new locales into it. They added some new types of bending, like there's metal bending, which is super duper cool. And one thing that they really did is that they kind of made it so it feels like the same world. Like sometimes sequel series, they will kind of progress the world far enough to the point where it doesn't really feel like the same world. Not in this case. Korra does feel like the same exact world from Avatar, which I thought was really, really cool. And all of that is great and awesome, and Korra is a worthy addition to like the Avatar universe, I guess. But it's also really weird. Fair warning, I'm going to be discussing a lot of spoilers here. So if you haven't watched Korra yet, like, go do that and then come back here, please. Season one starts off super strong with introducing us to our cast of characters in the city of Republic City. Obviously, instead of Aang, we've got Korra. Instead of Sokka, we've got like Mako and Bolin who kind of take up that role. We've got Tenzin and his family who are really, really cool. And we even have a villain who is voiced by Steve Bloom. And I thought like the villains of the season were really, really cool because Amon, who is voiced by Steve Bloom, kind of leads this group called the Equalists, and they're non-benders. And it's really interesting because the Equalists just want equality. Like, they're non-benders, and you can see like later on in the season, or I guess early on in the season, Korra joins like this dodgeball-ish sort of team, and you can really see how the society looks at like these benders, like kind of how we look at like professional athletes, where they're above us and they're bigger and they're gigantic, and we just look up to them all the time. Eventually, Amon and the Equalists show up at one of these events, and they show their card of taking away people's bending. So Amon goes from just being like kind of this mysterious villain to being super duper threatening really, really quickly. And Korra does this really cool thing that Avatar did as well, where they take real life topics and they represent them in super tasteful ways, like equality and things like that. Like thinking Avatar, where you've got Iroh losing a son, you've got Zuko's redemption arc. There are a ton of things that Avatar did, and I was just really, really glad to see that Korra wasn't going to shy away from representing real life topics again. And I'm really glad that they didn't, because the things that they tackle in Korra are a bit more deep than the things that were tackled in Avatar. Now, season two is where it starts to get weird. Like, the first half of season two is totally fine and interesting. It does this North versus South water tribe thing, which I thought was really, really cool. And it's, action packed and all that sort of stuff. There's not like a whole bunch of deep character development apart from like Bolin getting, what is it? He gets engaged to like the water princess, who is voiced by Aubrey Plaza for some reason. Hot. We get more depth into the character of Asami, who's still dealing with the actions of her father from the first season, which I thought was a really interesting concept because they didn't just kind of breeze past that. Like, her father did something really bad in the first season, and that effect stays throughout the entire show. And I thought that was really cool because there's a problem in animations and anime where they just seem to like lackadaisically go over like something like that, and they just never mention it again. And I was just really glad that the stakes that they entail like go throughout the entire show. Like, if something happens, they never just sweep it under the rug. Like, the effects remain the entire show, and I thought that was really, really cool. Jinora gets a huge arc this season, especially in the second half of this season. Even Tenzin gets some more development. We get introduced to his brother and sister, Kaya and Boomy, who, like, Boomy, he's the best. The second half of the season is where things start to really unravel for this show. They go into depth to explain kind of bending, and there are these two episodes where you're with the first avatar, and they spend so much time trying to explain how the spirit world works and how bending works that it I felt like it was kind of a detriment to the entire show. Like, don't get me wrong, like in Avatar there were moments where they kind of tried to explain things, but I didn't feel like we needed total explanation to this magic system. Like, it was fine. I don't think we need to know exactly why it works. It's like the Force in Star Wars. Like, you don't need to know why it works. It just works. Like, it's there to serve the story. It's not there to explain like, oh, how does he do that? And I'm gonna link down below. There's this video where the author Brandon Sanderson talks about magic systems. If you over explain your magic system, it kind of cheapens the story and the satisfaction that the magic system gives you. And I feel like Korra kind of did that. Like, we didn't need to be, have an explanation of how the avatar worked. I felt like it being mysterious and it just kind of being the MacGuffin of the show was good enough. I didn't need to know why the avatar became the avatar. It's just weird. And normally things like this don't bother me too much. Usually if there's like a backstory episode of how something works in one of these type of shows, I kind of do enjoy them. But to be honest, the two episodes with the first avatar bored me. And from then on out, the rest of the season, I just had to power through because I didn't care after it. Because you have the first half of season 2 be this war, and it's so cool and so exciting. And then it just stops because you go back in time, way back in time, for 40 minutes. And then just everything after that just seemed, I don't know. Like, I know a lot of people do like season 2. I just didn't like it. I think it's just like the type of storytelling and the way they went about explaining the spirit world that it just didn't click for me, which is unfortunate because the rest of the show kind of hinges on it. But I will say, like, Janora's story arc does this really predictable thing at the end, because this entire time that Korra is trying to fight the evil villain Unalaq, and Jinora is like lost in the spirit world, Tenzin and his brother and sister actually end up finding her. And after they save her, she stops, and I swear I just knew what was going to happen, where she's just like, hold on, I gotta go back. I got things to do. And I was just like, why? It's just weird. Like, you didn't need to do that. Why did we spend so much time getting to this point if you were just going to like pull that trigger at the end? It's so weird. It's so just, I wish season 2 was better. I really do. I really wish season 2 was better, but it's not. Is weird, and I just, why? And then there's season 3, which definitely in my mind is better than season 2. That being said, I don't have a ton to say about season 3 because I feel like it's the most self-contained story within Korra. Characters do have side arcs that do happen, and they're really cool. Like, Bolen's is really cool in season 3, but it's mainly just focused on the main story, and I felt like that was really cool and needed after season 2. Basically it's Team Avatar versus Zahir and his like band of merry men, who, by the way, Zahir, Henry Rollins? And after the events of season 2, the world is kind of changed, so it was interesting for them to add a few other things in this season. Like, there are more airbenders now, there are more bending types, like lava bending, which is super, super duper cool. I felt, though, even though the combat was more fluid than in Avatar, because the technology available just made it possible, I felt like it was more samey by the end of season 2, so it was really cool for them to add more things to make it more interesting. And at the end of season 3, it's really cool because it is a bittersweet ending to season 3. Like, eventually the Avatar does win again, but she is kind of changed forever for the events that happen at the end of season 3. And I thought that was really cool that, once again, something that happens stays throughout the entire show and bleeds into the rest of the show. And I thought that was really, really cool. Season 4, on the other hand, is a mixed bag of great ideas with just varying levels of execution. On paper, at a base level, every story arc that happens in season 4 is at least interesting. Like, you have Korra, who has PTSD after season 3, Bolin and Varric being in Kuvera's army, which is really, really cool. And even Mako. Mako gets something to do this season. That's cool, because he doesn't do anything the entire show. Oh, I guess I should mention the relationships in this show, because that's a big thing. They're mostly okay. They definitely focus a bit more on their relationships compared to Avatar. But I just don't have a ton to say about them, honestly. Like, they begin and they end, and they're not super impactful. The only one that really is interesting is Bolin's with Aubrey Plaza, but I mean, that's just kind of played off for comedy. The other ones are fine. It's just, it seems weird for them to focus on something like relationships, but not do that many things with it, apart from like, oh, they're together. Oh, they broke up. Oh, they're together again. Oh, they broke up again. Which I guess like is the only thing that Mako does consistently, is he's just a part of relationships the entire show, and he's just there to be a pretty boy and be the one. He's your boyfriend. And Korra having PTSD is a really, really interesting topic for this show to tackle. Again, another real life topic that they do represent tastefully. The only thing about it that's a bit weird is that it does take a really, really long time for her to get over the PTSD. And don't get me wrong, like, PTSD in real life, there is no timetable for it. But in this show, there was a definite, like, oh, okay, our show is ending in, like, 4 episodes. Maybe you need to wrap up this storyline to get her back in action. And I kind of felt like by the time that she got over her PTSD in the show, she was really just being sidelined to push the other stories forward. If you think about it, her whole thing with Kuvera could have been solved if she was at, like, her maximum level of power, because if you haven't noticed, she is OPAF the entire show. And Bolin and Varric being on Kuvera's army was interesting, albeit predictable, because we know these characters by this point. Like, obviously they're gonna defect after they realize, like, oh, Kuvera's not a good person. It was cool to see more of Varric and Julie in this entire event, so that was cool, because, like, even though the characters themselves aren't that dynamic, I did enjoy watching them, because it was just fun. It was just a fun moment. Those characters are just fun to watch. All right, let's talk about Toph and the old characters. The show does this really interesting thing with the characters that we knew from the original Team Avatar, where they kind of bring them back and they talk about them, but they also, like, make them all out to be bad parents. Which, like, in the case of Toph, I can kind of understand, because, you know, the character of Toph is sardonic. She's flippant the entire time. Like, yes, she has a heart of gold, but at least I could kind of see how she might be a bad parent. But, like, Katara and Aang being bad parents, I just no, I don't think that would be possible. These are the 2 characters from Avatar that are, like, the most caring out of them. I don't see, like, maybe Katara, maybe, but, like, Aang, I don't think Aang would ever be a bad parent. He cares about everybody. Oh yeah, and then, like, there's, like, moments with, like, Toph and Bolin in the same scene where, like, Bolin will, like, ask Toph, like, hey, what happened here? And she gives, like, her typical answer, which is just, like, a really short, like, oh, nothing, or something like that. And I don't know if it was played off for comedy or it was, like, supposed to be funny, but there are just these awkward pauses where he'll ask the question, and then you get, like, 2 seconds of the characters doing nothing, and it's silent. And then Bolin's just like, okay. Like, it's so weird, and it's so jarring. It's weird. Kuvera as a villain is so basic that, like, she doesn't do anything horribly wrong as a character. She doesn't do anything good as a character. She's just a very underwritten character. And I remember when she got introduced at the end of season 3, where she's just, like, this random soldier that they ask her what her name is. She's like, oh, my name's Kuvera. And I'm just like, why did that happen? That was weird. Like, why did this random person do that? Well, it turns out that character is the villain of season 4. She desperately needed more characterization, and at least some motivation for what she's doing. Why, like, what is the motivation for this character? And when looking at some of the stuff, I actually found that the budget for the show got cut in the middle of season 4, and there was originally supposed to be an episode with Kuvera's backstory that got cut, and instead we got episode 8 of season 4, which is Remembrances, which is the worst episode of anything related to Avatar ever. It is a clip recap episode that serves no point whatsoever except to fill an episode order. Like, they just reuse clips, and it essentially just focuses on the relationships, which at this point in the show don't really matter because they're focused on the big threat of Kuvera. Relationships weren't really, apart from Zhu Li and Varric, the relationships in this season didn't really matter. When that episode happens, it's so jarring because I remember watching it in sequence because I kind of binged season 4, and when Remembrances hits, it's like just bam. It's worse than in season 2 when you get the first Avatar episodes. Like, no, it's bad because all momentum just dies when that episode hits. And that episode wouldn't be as weird if the placement wasn't that bad. Like, you could have thrown that episode like maybe like episode 2 or 3 of season 4 and it would have been better, like, if you had to have that episode. But you didn't. It's there, it's really weirdly placed, and it serves no purpose. Why if you didn't have to make that episode, you could have just had one last episode and saved on the budget and just done a Kuvera episode. It's such a weird choice, and I don't get it. Why is that episode there? The end of the show is pretty great. Like, where the characters end up makes a lot of sense, and the show does end again with yet another representation of a real world topic, and I thought it was a really tasteful way to end the show. Even though I don't think I'm going to revisit Korra as much as I'm going to revisit Avatar, I still think it is a worthy, entry into, like, the Avatar universe. Like, it has its problems, but it's fine. Like, you can get through it, and, like, I think some of the problems that I had with Korra aren't the same problems that a lot of people have with it. Like, a lot of people do like season 2 and they do like the direction of the spirit world. I just personally didn't like that, which is fine. It has me hopeful that one day we'll get more shows in the world of the Avatar because it is such a cool world, and I know there are books out right now for it and I haven't read them, but I just want more because the world's so ripe. Like, you could just keep doing, like, pick a random avatar and do their story, and it's interesting because the world is just ripe to put at any time period. It's cool, and I hope we do get more eventually. But to sum up, I mean, here are my ratings for all the seasons and then the score I would give for the entire show. It's definitely worth your time. If you liked Avatar, I definitely would say check it out. It's definitely nowhere near as good and solid as Avatar, but it's a lot of fun. This is the end of the video where I say thank you for watching, and if you liked this, press the little like button and then press subscribe so I can have more motivation to make more of these in the future. I've got links for a bunch of stuff down below, so go check those out if you're interested in all that sort of stuff. I don't know what the next video is going to be, but we'll see. Bye. Love you.